The alien woman stood alone in the middle of the busy market. Her long gray robe was torn and dirty, and her feet were bleeding from walking too long without shoes. In her arms she held a small child, no older than 3. The boy was shaking from hunger. His lips were dry. His tiny hands were gripping her shirt like he was holding on to life itself. She looked at the crowd around her. They were aliens of all kinds, rich traders, farmers, guards, but no one looked her in the eye. No one stopped. Some even laughed when they saw her. Others whispered cruel words and walked away. Then she did something that froze the entire street. She stepped forward, held up her child, and cried out with all her strength, "Take my life. Just feed my son." Everyone stopped. Some turned their heads. A few came closer. A young alien girl covered her mouth in shock. A trader clicked his tongue and said, "Another beggar." The guards moved in. They didn't like scenes like this. They thought she was causing trouble. But the woman didn't run. She fell to her knees in the dust, still holding her son up high. "Please," she whispered, "he hasn't eaten in 2 days. I'll give anything. Even my life. Just not his." The child moaned softly, too weak to cry now. The mother began to shake. She had no strength left. She was ready to collapse. At the edge of the crowd, a human man stood silently. He was tall and wore a simple jacket. He looked like a traveler, maybe even a poor one. His hands were rough, and his face showed pain, but not from hunger. It was the kind of pain that came from loss. He didn't speak. He didn't step forward right away. He just watched. The crowd waited for someone to do something. Some took out small coins and tossed them toward her, not enough to help. Some guards warned her again, "Move along or be removed." She lowered her head. "So be it," she said. She gently laid her child down on the ground, then slowly stood up, arms raised. "I give myself. Just feed him." A heavy silence fell, and that's when the human moved. He stepped through the crowd, his boots crunching softly on the dirt. He knelt beside the boy and opened his bag. Inside was food. Real food: bread, dried meat, fruit. He broke the bread and gave it to the child, piece by piece, carefully. The boy opened his eyes and took the food slowly, like he wasn't sure. It was real. The crowd gasped. The woman stared, frozen. The human looked up at her. "You don't have to die," he said. "You just need someone to care." He stood and looked at the guards. "She's with me now." The guards hesitated. No one argued with a human who spoke like that. The mother fell to the ground in shock. "Why?" she whispered. The man didn't answer right away. He picked up the boy and offered his hand to her. No child should starve, and no mother should have to choose between her life and his. The market was quiet. People moved aside. As the human walked away, holding the child in one arm, guiding the mother with the other. And behind them, the dirt where she had begged was left empty, but no one forgot what they saw. The stranger's steps in the road ahead was silent, but her heart was not. The alien mother walked behind the human man with slow, careful steps. Her arms trembled. Her son now slept in his arms, full for the first time in days. The weight of that moment hadn't faded, yet how one man had stepped in when no one else dared. No questions. No conditions. Just food. Just help. He hadn't even told her his name. She didn't know where he was taking them, but somehow her fear didn't scream like before. Still, her body stayed tense, ready to run, ready to fight, ready for a trap. She had seen too many smiles that turned into chains. They turned a corner, leaving the market far behind. Broken fences, half-buried wires, and tall alien weeds lined the dusty road. The place looked forgotten, just like her. But the man walked with calm purpose, as if he knew this road well. At last, he stopped in front of a small, worn-down house on the edge of the colony. 1 floor, 2 windows, and a faded solar panel that barely hummed. "This is my place," he said, unlocking the door. She didn't move. He looked back at her. "You can come in or keep running." "But he needs rest." He didn't wait for an answer. He walked inside. She stood there, staring at the open door. Her feet wouldn't move. Every part of her screamed that it was a trick. That behind that door, she'd find chains again, a cage. A man who'd claim he owned her now because of some bread. But then, her son gave a small sigh in his sleep. 4. That sound alone, she moved. Inside, the home smelled like old wood and metal. It was simple, clean. There were 2 chairs, a table, a narrow bed, and a folded blanket. A small machine clicked in the corner, some kind of heater. No chains, no cameras. Just quiet. The man laid her son gently on the bed and covered him. Then he handed her a cloth and nodded toward a wash basin. "Clean up. I'll make something warm." She looked at him with wide eyes. "Why? Are you doing this?" He stirred a pot and didn't look at her. "You screamed something in the market today." And no one moved, but I couldn't forget the words. She didn't reply. He set 2 bowls of soup on the table, steam. Rising from the edges, the smell hit her like a wave. Her stomach twisted with hunger, but her hand shook as she reached for the spoon. She looked at him again, afraid. "I have nothing to give," she said. "I didn't ask," he answered. Tears stung her eyes. Not from pain, not even from hunger, but from the strange way this moment felt like safety, like something she'd almost forgotten existed. He finally sat down across from her. "What's your name?" he asked. She hesitated, then whispered, "Karenna." He nodded. "Mine's Jace." She stared at him, this quiet, broken man who had fed her child and asked for nothing. Jace looked toward the sleeping boy. "What's his name?" She took a breath. "Aaron," Jace smiled faintly. "He's strong." Like his mother. For the first time in years, Karenna didn't feel invisible. And in that quiet room, with soup in her hands and her son resting safely, she felt something even more dangerous than fear. Hope. She would soon learn is the beginning of everything. A meal, a memory rain tapped gently against the small window. Inside, the house was still, warm. The scent of cooked herbs and fresh fireroot soup floated through the air like a forgotten dream. Karenna sat at the edge of the chair, holding the bowl in both hands. It wasn't just soup, it was proof. Proof that kindness still existed. Proof that her son wasn't forgotten by the stars. Aaron slept quietly on the bed nearby, his small chest rising and falling. His lips weren't dry anymore. His breathing was soft, like a breeze after a storm. Karenna lifted the spoon, then stopped. Her fingers shook, not from cold, but because her body didn't understand what safety felt like. She had run for too long, begged too many times, been rejected again and again. Now there was no one shouting, no one spitting, just a bowl of food and a man watching her quietly. "Eat," Jay said, voice calm. "It's hot, you'll feel better." She stared at the soup. It reminded her of something. Long ago, before slavery, before running, before everything. "My mother used to make this," she whispered. Jace looked up. She must have had good taste. Karenna smiled for a second, but it was the kind of smile that hurt. A smile that came from a broken memory. "She died when I was a child," she sighed. "She tried to hide us when the raiders came. But they took her, took me, sold me." Jace didn't interrupt. He didn't ask for more. He just listened. Karenna stirred the soup, then said, "They told me I was lucky, that my price was high. I was young, healthy. They even gave me a collar with gold on it." Said I should be proud. Her eyes didn't water. They had dried years ago. "I escaped," she said softly. Not for myself. For Aaron, I ran, hid in trash piles, slept in cold tunnels. I thought someone would help us. Someone good. Jace leaned back slightly, and no one did, not until you. Silence filled the room for a moment, thick and full of weight. Jace reached into a small drawer and pulled out a soft cloth. He walked over to Aaron and gently wiped the boy's face, then tucked the blanket around him better. Karena watched, stunned. "You've done this before," she said. He paused. "I had a family once," her voice softened. "What happened?" "They were taken during the mining riots on Terra 5. My wife. My little girl." He turned away slightly. "I buried them under glass sky. The war left nothing else behind." Karena stood slowly, the bowl forgotten on the table. "I'm sorry," she said. "Truly." Jace gave a small shrug. "Pain is pain. Doesn't matter what skin you wear. Doesn't matter what planet you were born on. The galaxy doesn't care." He turned toward her. "But we can." The rain outside grew heavier. It hit the roof like footsteps from the past. Karena stepped closer to the window, staring out. Into the storm she had trusted no one for years. She had only known hunger, fear, and running. But this stranger had given her something no one else ever had, not just food or shelter. He had given her dignity, and that, more than anything, made her afraid, because if this was real, it meant her life could change. And for the first time, she didn't want to run anymore. Asterisk shadows of the past. The rain stopped by morning, but the silence it left behind was louder than thunder. Karena stood outside Jace's house, wrapped in a clean cloak he had given her. The air smelled of wet dirt and fresh leaves, but her senses stayed sharp. Every breeze made her flinch. Every distant noise made her scan the sky. Inside, Aaron played quietly with a small carved toy Jace had made overnight. The child smiled, laughed even. It was a sound Karena had almost forgotten, but she didn't smile. Not yet. Her body knew peace was dangerous. Peace never lasted, and she was right. That night, the first shadow appeared. A ship sleek, black, and silent descended over the edge of the colony just outside the main district. No flashing lights, no official codes. Only the soft hum of engines designed to stalk, not announce. Karena saw it through the kitchen window. Her blood froze. Her claws dug into the edge of the table. She knew that design.slavers. Her breath caught in her throat. Her first thought wasn't escape, it was Aaron. She rushed to the bedroom, where her son was already half-asleep. She grabbed him, heart racing. "Get your bag," she whispered. "We need to run." But before she could take a step, Jace appeared. In the hallway, he held a rifle. His face was calm, but his eyes were sharp, too sharp for a simple farmer. "You saw it?" he asked. She nodded. "Then you're staying here," he said. "What?" Karena stepped back, clutching Aaron. "No, we have to hide." "They're here for me." Jace looked at her and said one sentence that made her legs weak. "They're not. Just here for you." He turned and walked to a hidden wall panel, pressed a code, and it opened with a soft hiss. Inside, weapons, real ones, military grade, some outlawed, some not even built by human hands. Karena stared, stunned. "Who are you?" He didn't answer. He handed her a small blaster. "Stay inside. Keep the lights off. Do not open the door unless I knock 3 times. Karena looked down at the blaster, then at her son. Her body trembled, not from fear, but from the sudden realization that Jace was not what he seemed. He wasn't just kind. He wasn't just brave. He was dangerous. Outside, 2 more ships landed near the edge of the woods. Figures emerged, tall and armored. She knew their colors, deep red over black. The mark of the Tragan slave cartel. They weren't just passing by. They had tracked her. One figure scanned the area. "She was seen here," the slaver growled to the others. "She has a child." "Search the area?" Quietly. Karenna crouched by the window, blaster shaking in her hands. She whispered to herself, "I never wanted this to touch him." But it had, and now the man who fed her child was preparing to defend them both, not because he had to, not because she begged, but because something inside him still burned something that refused to let evil win, and outside, in the growing dark, the hunters came closer. They didn't know the house they approached was not unguarded. They didn't know the man inside had already buried one family, and he wasn't about to bury another asterisk. One man's war, the first scream never came. The first intruder didn't even hit the ground loud enough to wake a bird. Jace moved like smoke, through the dark, silent, invisible, and deadly. The slaver scout had barely taken 3 steps past the gate when Jace's arm wrapped around his neck, pulling him into the shadows. A soft snap, then nothing. Karenna watched from the window, heart hammering in her chest. She had seen fighters. She had seen rebels. She had seen monsters. But she had never seen a man like this. Outside, the enemy kept coming. 3 more, then 5. Moving like ghosts, scanning with their devices, searching for her scent, for heat, traces, for anything that could lead them to their prize. She gripped the blaster tightly, shielding Aaron with her body. The little boy clung to her, silent now, sensing the fear in her bones. A bright light flashed through the window. She ducked. Her back hit the wall. They were near, too near. Then the explosion came. Not from the house, from behind the intruders. Jace had planted mines in the field. Old tech, hidden beneath dirt and roots, still sharp enough to tear open metal. Screams finally filled the air. Karenna peered out again. Fire. Smoke chaos. 2 slavers down. Another trying to crawl. Jace walked out of the smoke with purpose, his coat moving with the wind, a new weapon in hand. They shot at him. He didn't hide. He moved through the bullets like he'd done it 1,000 times. 1 shot, 1 kill, again and again. The last. Slaver stood frozen, weapon shaking. He didn't shoot, he spoke. "We didn't know it was you," the slaver said. "We were told it was just a woman, a runaway and her brat." Jace stared at him, cold. "You came for the weak," he said. "You brought fire for a mother and child." The slaver dropped his gun. "Wait, we were paid." Jace didn't let him finish. The shot echoed across the quiet field. And then silence again. The fire lit the field in orange. Slaver bodies smoldered like ash in the wind. Karenna stepped outside, holding Aaron close, her legs unsteady. She walked toward Jace, the ground littered with smoke and death. She stopped in front of him. "You fought like a soldier," she whispered. "I was one," he said. "Why would a soldier hide in a broken house, feeding strangers?" He didn't answer. She looked into his face. The fire reflected in his eyes, but something deeper burned behind them. "You've lost everything," she said. He nodded once. "But you still fight for others." Jace looked toward the wreckage. "Because no one fought for mine." Karenna fell quiet. Then, after a pause, she asked, "Will they send more?" "Maybe," he said, "but not tonight." He turned to her, voice steady. "You and your son are safe, as long as I breathe." She blinked fast, as if trying to hold back emotion. "No one's ever said that to me." "You'll hear it again," Jace said. "Every day if I have to." In the ashes of a battlefield, with a child wrapped in her arms and a quiet promise ringing in her ears, Karenna realized something she hadn't felt in years. She wasn't running anymore. She had found something worth staying for, and someone who would fight to keep it safe. The truth in the firelight, the fire was almost out. Only glowing embers remained, like sleeping stars in the ashes of war. Inside the house, The quiet returned, but it was no longer the silence of fear. It was the stillness after a storm, heavy with unspoken thoughts. Karenna sat at the small table, her son curled up safe and warm nearby. But her eyes never left the man across from her. Jace sat without armor now, just a plain shirt soaked in sweat and smoke. He cleaned his rifle with practiced hands, calm, precise, but Karenna had seen what lay behind that quiet. "You were more than just a soldier," she said. Jace didn't look up. "I've seen soldiers before. They fight. They protect. But you ended those men like it was personal." He paused, then set the weapon down. "You want the truth?" he asked softly. She nodded. He leaned back, staring at the ceiling as if seeing a memory instead of wood. "I used to wear a command badge. Led human squads during the Outer Ring Wars. I wasn't just fighting slavers, I was hunting them." He looked at her now. His eyes were tired but sharp. "Until one day, I hunted too slow." Karenna didn't speak. "They took my wife. My daughter. I was halfway across the system when I got the message. Too far. Too late. When I arrived, the house was burned. All that remained were ashes and their names carved into the wall. I found who did it. I made sure they never hurt anyone again." He stood up, walked to the small shelf, and picked up a piece of carved wood, two small figures holding hands. He placed it gently in front of her. "I made this to remember them, so I wouldn't forget why I stopped fighting. Why I walked away." Karenna touched the carving with trembling fingers. "So why did you fight again?" He looked at Aaron, then back at her. "Because I saw the same fear in your eyes, the same silence in his. And I couldn't let it happen again." Karenna's voice cracked. "You didn't even know us." "You screamed in the market," Jace said. "That kind of scream comes from a soul that's been stepped on too many times. I knew it. I'd heard it before in myself." Tears slipped from her eyes. "I was ready to die," she whispered. "And you gave me life." Jace stepped closer but didn't touch her. "I didn't save you out of pity, Karenna. I saved you because I knew you'd do the same if it were the other way around." She met his gaze, and for the first time didn't look away. "You don't have to run anymore," he said gently. "Not here." Karenna glanced at her son. His chest rose and fell in steady sleep. His face no longer looked tight with fear. The child had peace, because of this man, because of his pain. His choice. "I don't know what comes next," she said. "Neither do I," Jace replied. "But whatever it is, you won't face it alone." The embers crackled softly. Outside, the stars returned to the sky, not as watchers from above, but as silent witnesses to two broken lives beginning to heal. And in that quiet firelight, where stories were born and scars were shared, Karenna began to believe, not just in survival, but in home, home for the forgotten. The morning sun broke through the clouds like a promise. Golden light poured into the small house, touching the floorboards, warming the corners where shadows used to hide. Birds chirped in the nearby trees, and for the first time in years, Karenna woke up without fear. She lay still for a moment, listening. Aaron was still asleep, his little hand holding the edge of the blanket. His face looked softer, rounder, fuller. He had eaten 3 meals yesterday. His body was finally remembering what safety felt like. Karenna sat up slowly and stepped outside. The air was fresh, the sky clear. No slaver ships. No guards. No running. Just peace. Jace was already outside, fixing a broken section of the fence. He worked without noise, his sleeves rolled up, hands covered in dust and effort. He looked like he belonged there, not a ghost of war, not a hunter of slavers, just a man building something solid, something that would last. Karenna walked up beside him. "You don't rest much," Jace smiled without turning. "Don't." "Need to. This helps me breathe." She watched him for a moment. You really don't expect anything in return, do you? He stopped, wiped his hands on a cloth, turned to her. What could I ask for that you haven't already given? She blinked. What have I given? He pointed toward the house. That boy's laughter last night? That's something I hadn't heard in years. That's what you gave me. Karenna looked down, her throat tight. I still don't know how. To thank you, she whispered. Then don't, he said. Just live, stay, let him grow here. That's enough. She stared at the small home behind her, the rough fence, the repaired roof, the quiet road leading into the trees. And for the first time, it looked like something more than shelter. It looked like home. Later that afternoon, Jace took her and Aaron into town. He walked beside them without fear, head high, step steady. Some of the locals stared, others whispered. But no one dared challenge him. At the citizen registry office, Jace filled out the forms himself. He listed Aaron's name as undercare. He listed Karenna's name next to his, not as servant, not as prisoner, as family. The worker behind the desk looked up. You sure about this? It's permanent. Jace didn't blink. Yes, I'm sure. Karenna stood frozen. Why would you do that? He answered simply, because you were forgotten. And I was too. But two forgotten people can still build something worth remembering. She couldn't speak. Not without crying. When they left the office, Aaron held Jace's hand. Like he'd done it all his life. No fear, no hesitation. Just trust. That night, as the stars returned to the sky and the wind moved gently through the trees, Karenna stood outside the home that was now hers. She whispered into the wind. Not a prayer, not a plea, just a promise. I won't run anymore. Inside. Jace sat by the fire, reading from a worn data pad. He looked up when she entered. You're home now, he said. And this time she believed him. Because home wasn't walls. It wasn't safety. Home was a choice. And someone had finally chosen her.